Over a history of several thousand years of Chinese civilization, why were a number of extraordinary military engineering projects carried out in the times of the first Emperor of Qin? And why were they all concentrated within a short period of 10-odd years before and after the unification of China? Perhaps we might find the answer when we follow the traces of that invincible army of the first Emperor of Qin. 219 BC, a Qin army is stationed in the remote south of China, now Guilin, Guangxi province. In the headquarters, Tu Sui, the commander of the Qin army, writes a letter to the first emperor of Qin, who was then in Xianyang. It reads, "Your Majesty, the war goes smoothly. It won't be long before Lingnan submits to our empire and China is unified." 2 years before that, 6 states in the Central Plain had succumbed to the Qin one after another. The valleys of the Yellow River and the Yangtze River had become the territory of Qin state, but the large area of the Zhujiang River Valley in the south was still not under their control. Under the orders of the first emperor of Qin, 500,000 Qin warriors started to march south. They rapidly advanced to Guilin and encountered no resistance. But the progress of the war did not go as Tu Sui expected. Indomitable aboriginals appeared and disappeared mysteriously. They hid themselves during daytime and made sneak attacks at night. Furthermore, noxious swamp air filled the forest, and poisonous insects and snakes were everywhere. The expeditionary army was in a state of utter exhaustion. They were often killed by sudden attacks in their sleep. The war dragged on. Finally, the worst happened. The army was about to run out of food. Hunger not only sapped their morale, but it was also destroying the empire's ambition of conquering the south. From the northern granaries to the southern front, the logistical support depended mainly on land transportation. The dense forest, high mountains, and faraway rivers in the undeveloped south made it extremely difficult to transport supplies to the Qin army. Then Tu Sui, the commander-in-chief, was killed in a surprise attack. The assassination threw the whole army into a panic. According to the historical records, the first emperor of Qin was extremely anxious. He himself hurried to the south and reached the Xiang River Valley. He came to realize that if he wanted to end the war in the south, he had to solve the problem of getting supplies to his army. There's a river, a very ordinary river, in Xingan County, Guangxi province. For over 2,000 years, inhabitants here have used it to navigate and irrigate their crops. But few of them know that this man-made canal, Lingchu, is the only passage for a northern fleet to reach Lingnan from the Yangtze River. Before that long drawn-out jungle warfare, there was no river link between the Yangtze River and the Zhu River. Army provisions for 500,000 Qin soldiers had to be transported by land. Supplies were not guaranteed. The first emperor of Qin was burning with impatience. A man named She Lu put forward a bold suggestion: cut a canal between the Xiang and Li rivers in order to link the two southern and northern river systems. The fleet could set out from the granaries in Sichuan, entering the Xiang River, a branch of the Yangtze River, then through this canal reach the Li River, a branch of the Zhu River. Logistical materials could thus be sent to the front by water. This was a surprising idea. At that time there were links between the Yellow River and the Yangtze River. That meant there was a direct water access from the empire's capital, Xianyang, to Guangzhou. But to cut this canal, they would face an incredibly difficult engineering problem. The direct distance between Xiang River and Li River is only 4.8 kilometers, but the drop in elevation is several hundred meters. If the canal were cut through, the water would rush down wildly and make it impossible to navigate.
那么陵区怎么样解决这个问题呢？那么它就盘旋反复，用延长渠道的这样一个长度，在同样一个高差的情况下，使它的坡降减缓，流速降低，适合于航行的需要。
Today, no one knows how the Lingchu project was first envisaged, nor do we know how they managed to finish it within 2 years. It really is a miracle. Over 2,000 years ago, this 33-kilometer-long canal was the largest inland waterway transportation network in human history. After the Lingchu Canal project was completed, the supply transportation problem was solved. The next year, the Qin army suppressed the native resistance. The territory of the empire now extended to the southern sea. Once the south was pacified, the Huns became the last adversary of the Qin army. This nomadic nationality in the northern grasslands posed a great menace to the Central Plains civilization. When the Qin army was fighting in the south, the Huns crossed the Yellow River, directly threatening the Qin capital, Xianyang. In 215 BC, following a decree of the first Qin emperor, General Meng Tian commanded a Qin army to march northward to solve the problem of the Huns. But the 300,000 fierce Qin soldiers didn't engage in a decisive battle with the Han cavalry. They stopped by the Great Wall, which had been in a state of disrepair for years. During the spring and autumn period and the Warring States period, in order to resist invasion by the Huns, the northern states, Qin, Zhao and Yan, had constructed a great wall in succession along their frontiers. This ancient great wall in Lintao County, Gansu province, was built by Qin Zhao Wang over 100 years before the first emperor of Qin. From the Qin Great Wall, northeastward, through an unfortified crisscross network of gullies in the Lus Plateau, stretched the Zhao Great Wall, which had been put to use over several hundred years. But at the time the Zhao state died out, the wall was in disrepair and not continuous. When the Qin army arrived at the northern frontier, their task was to maintain and renovate the dilapidated wall. The Qin army and the Huns had fought for several hundred years. Meng Tian's forefathers had been Qin generals for generations, so Meng Tian fully understood the difficulties involved in fighting against the Huns. These Huns were nomadic tribes. They had no definite residences and moved about like the wind. Suddenly, they could gather together and become a fierce troop. Then, in no time, they reverted to being herdsmen and scattered to remote places. The Huns were experts in guerrilla warfare. If the Qin army were to launch an attack in haste, the Han cavalrymen would avoid them, detouring around and plundering at will. They even attacked the Qin army's rear. The Qin army became exhausted. They weren't suited to this long drawn-out, fruitless warfare. Under these circumstances, Meng Tian adopted the Great Wall strategy. The Great Wall, built and reconstructed by the Qin army, was not just a wall. It could be used not only for defense, but also for attack. The first important role of the Great Wall was to give early warning. The highest beacon towers were lookout posts. To give this early warning, some of the beacon towers stood far out from the Great Wall. Along the Great Wall, the Qin army constructed many walled towns. They served not only as residences for garrison soldiers and civilians, but also as support bases for the Great Wall fortifications. At a certain distance away from the Great Wall, the Qin army also constructed fortresses for stationing troops. These fortresses could not only hold large numbers of soldiers, but also large quantities of logistic materials. When the Qin army launched an attack on the Huns, these fortresses became advanced bases. This was the strategic in-depth defense system of the Great Wall frontier. Thus, the Qin army could avoid useless field operations. 1 year later, Tian's troops had basically completed the project of maintaining and reconstructing the Great Wall. The time was ripe for launching an attack against the Han cavalry. Relying on the Great Wall, the well-equipped Qin army took only 1 year to defeat the Huns, who then retreated deep into the desert. The first emperor of Qin fully realized the strategic importance of the Great Wall and began reconstruction on a large scale. The Qin Empire recruited 1 million men to start this unprecedented defensive engineering project along the 5,000-kilometer-long northern frontier. Most of the construction sites were in wild and remote places. According to the historical records, the bones of the dead filled whole networks of gullies. From Lintao in the west to Liaodong in the east, the Great Wall stretched 5,000 kilometers along the northern frontier of the Qin Empire. This was the greatest military engineering feat in human history. During this counterattack against the Huns, in spite of the advantages offered by the Great Wall, the Qin people still paid a great price in guaranteeing logistical supplies, including food. Experts estimated that they exhausted the granaries in Sichuan. The food from the Guangzhou plain could not be used because it guaranteed the supply for the capital. Therefore, provisions for the army in the north mainly came from the Shandong Peninsula. The direct distance from there to the northern grasslands is over 1,000 kilometers, but the transportation troops would twice have to pass through the Taihang Mountains and cross the Yellow River 3 times. According to history books, on the way from the starting point to the destination, on average, only 1 pound of food remained for the army out of 192 transported.
192担，这个剩下1担，就是途中消耗的率啊是99.5%，就是99.5%的粮食都在运粮途中消耗了，到了这个战区的很少了，这可以看出这古代那个粮食运输啊。
In order to transport army provisions to the front, hundreds of thousands of conscripted labourers died on the way. But by hiding themselves deep in the grasslands, the Huns still survived. They might come southward again at any time. The difficulty of transporting provisions left a deep impression on the first Qin emperor. As the policy maker of the empire, he had to solve the problem completely. 100 years after the fall of the Qin Empire, the historian Sima Qian toured the northern border. The scholar was greatly shocked when he saw the highway flying through lofty mountains and over high ranges. He wrote in the historical records, "The thoroughfare is straight, mountains were cut and gullies were filled in. The straight road was built by cutting mountains and filling gullies." The first emperor of Qin solved the problem by constructing this straight road, effectively a military expressway 2,000 years ago.